Anyone, please. Something else out here. Open the hatch. Oh, go.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2011 found footage film Apollo 18. The film is directed by Gonzalo Lopez Gallego and it stars Warren Christie, Lloyd Owen and Ryan Robbins. Now this film goes on the premise of officially the last moon mission was Apollo 17. This film starts off with the announcement that in actual fact there was an Apollo 18 mission that was sent to the moon that nobody knows about. And we have the whole tagline of "There's a reason we never went back." And the reason we never went back was because of Apollo 18. We have 3 astronauts. We've got Ben Anderson, Nate and John Gray. 2 of these astronauts end up going down to the surface of the moon, and the third one stays on the craft in orbit, sort of thing. When they get down to the moon surface, these 2 astronauts find some anomalies. They find a Russian, like an abandoned Russian mission, which nobody seems to know about. And then they start seeing and hearing strange things. And it turns out that in actual fact they may not be alone, and NASA may know more than they are letting on. Right, what are my thoughts on Apollo 18? Well, again, you know, if you watch my content, that I am a huge fan of found footage films. I remember when this came out in 2011, and I've always been a found footage fan, but I remember seeing the trailers for this before it came out. And I just remember getting so excited about going to see this film because I just thought the premise and the setup was superb. You know, this whole idea of there's a reason we never went back to the moon. And I just thought it just tapped into, you know, that real fear of the unknown sort of thing, this science fiction fear, horror fear of something on the moon sort of thing. And the fact that there was another mission that went there that nobody knows about. And this footage has been found, and it's been uploaded to this website unedited, so on and so forth. I mean, it's a great idea and it's a great concept, and I think if this film had have kind of been released earlier in the cycle of, you know, found footage, like if this had have come out at the time or just before or just after, like the Blair Witch Project sort of thing, this probably, I think, would have been better received and probably have caught the imagination a little bit more. I think it's unfortunate, I think, that this film came out when it came out in 2011, right at the height of the diluting of the subgenre, if you like. Found footage was just being done left, right and centre, low budget ones, mid budget ones, and quite a lot of high budget ones that were getting released in the cinema. And this is one of those that you could class as a high budget found footage film. Now, generally, obviously, found footage films are hyper low budget films. Famously, obviously, the Blair Witch Project was made on a shoestring budget and made literally hundreds of millions from box office receipts. This one, and I don't necessarily know what budget that this film had, but it was the budget $5 million from what I can find out here, and it made 26 million worldwide. So I mean, it did turn in a profit, but this film really needed to bring in the numbers to make it what you would describe as a success. This film was fairly poorly received critically, and even by some audience members, and I think a lot of that was down to the fatigue from people just seeing these found footage films getting churned out left, right and centre. But I've always actually been a little bit of a fan of this one. It captured my imagination at the time, and it still does now. There are moments in this film where it feels hyper realistic, and it just gives me chills. You know, at times it feels like you're watching a real NASA mission. So for some, the early part of this film will kind of feel like you're watching a documentary, and not a very interesting documentary at that. But for a found footage film, the setup is just beautiful. It's such a fabulous setup. You get to meet the astronauts. They're all excited to go to the moon. They're a bit bummed out because they can't talk about it because it's a secret mission. And then you get all the rigmarole of them setting off, blasting off, and then landing on the moon and doing the collecting of samples and all the jolly stuff and happy stuff and messages from home and all that kind of stuff. And it feels like, you know, as I've said, a bit like a documentary. And they did use authentic cameras for the most part from that era as well to make it feel more realistic. But this film really comes alive because it's one of those films that it kind of leaves the camera on a certain part of the landscape and you're looking desperately to see if you can see anything, and most of the time you can't, and there are some moments where you can just see a little flicker of something, and it's one of those films that just kind of slowly builds. So you've got like this real threat developing as the film goes on. And if you've never seen Apollo 18, I don't really want to spoil what actually happens and what the threat is. But needless to say, I mean, again, this will divide audiences, and it has divided audiences in regards to what is found on the moon. I actually think it's actually quite effective, what happens and what they find. And there's a couple of scenes that absolutely does give you chills. You know, the classic scenes of something in the spacesuit type of thing, and then you see things crawling through past helmets and stuff. I mean, it's impactful stuff, and the actors here all portray their roles expertly. You know what I mean? You feel like they know what they're talking about when it comes to being astronauts. You actually do end up building a bit of a relationship with them in a sense of you care about what happens to them to a large degree. It's just, for me, for a lot of people, I think the pacing of this will be a bit of a struggle, but I think most found footage films are kind of paced very similar to this, and it's part of the reason I like them, because I'm a patient watcher of movies for the most part. I have to be when you consider a lot of the low budget films I watch and review on this channel. But I've always been quite a patient film watcher, which is probably part of the reason I do like found footage. You know, I can, if the setup's good and it all makes sense, it follows that blueprint for found footage, why the cameras are there, why there's filming going on, and you get little hints here and there, things just not right, and then it kind of, you know, arcs up, and then until it gets to a real crescendo of tension and horror and violence or whatever it is in regards to the found footage that you're watching. And this definitely delivers. It gives you a solid ending. Doesn't show as much as you would like, especially when you consider the budget involved here. 5 million, I know, is not a huge amount, but for found footage, it's like, you know, it's like 100 million for a normal film, or like 5 million for a found footage film. And you do get hints as well from glimpses that you see of like other bigger things, bigger creatures, if you like, on the moon. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a solid outing. I've always think it's a solid outing. There are some that will watch it and think it's too polished, sort of thing. Maybe, I mean, some of the charm for found footage is that, you know, real low budget look and feel to them for the most part. But for me, I like sometimes a glossed up and well budgeted found footage film. They can be just as rewarding, and for me, this is a film that I'm happy to have in my collection, being a found footage fan, and it is a film that I do enjoy revisiting periodically as well. And I do urge you guys, if you're a fan of found footage and you've never seen Apollo 18, I suspect you will find some moments in this film that will stand out. It won't be the best found footage you'll ever watch, but it definitely, I guarantee, will not be the worst either. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful. Stay with the channel, because there'll be loads more content coming very, very soon.